back to QuietKat's video series on maintenance. In this video, we're going to show you how to replace your brake pads. Over time, your brake pads will become worn down and will need to be replaced. This is a common thing. Most of us typically replace our brake pads every season so that we can maximize our stopping power and our confidence when we're out there in the middle of nowhere. So if you have the mechanical disc brake, we've gone ahead and removed the cable from the mechanical arm. If you have a hydraulic disc brake, we're going to go ahead and step straight forward to move in the caliper. Using your 5mm wrench, locate the two bolts that mount the caliper to the adapter and go ahead and loosen them up. So we're going to completely remove the bolts holding the caliper onto the adapter. You don't need to remove the adapter, you can leave that attached to the frame. We just need the caliper free, pull it back and forward so that we can get underneath and gain access to the pads. On the top of the caliper, you're going to notice a retaining pin for the brake pads. Some pads use a cotter pin, others use a small 2.5 or 3mm Allen bolt that goes through there. So the next step is to go ahead and remove that cotter pin or retaining pin so that we can free the old pads. So we're going to remove the retaining pin or screw, and that should allow us to push the pads down and then pull them out the other end of the caliper. So now that we've got our old pads out, we can go ahead and discard them and install the new ones. Your new set of pads is going to include 2 pads, a new alligator clip, and a new retention clip. It's important to try to avoid touching the pad with your bare hands, especially if you have grease on your fingers, as this can contaminate the pad and render them useless once you get them installed in the bike. So very carefully, using our alligator clip, we're just going to line that up onto each pad. On these Tektro pads for your QuietKat bike, there is not a right and a left, unlike many other brands. Slide the pads into the clip so that we can create our small alligator, and then we're going to slide the whole lot into the caliper from the bottom up. Next, go ahead and replace the retaining pin. If it's a bolt, go ahead and tighten it. If it's a cotter pin, go ahead and bend off the end to prevent it from sliding back through. If you have a mechanical disc brake, now is a great time to go ahead and get to that backside pad adjustment using your 5mm and back it off all the way. You'll know it's backed off all the way when the pad impacts the inner part of the caliper. This is going to give you the maximum distance to go ahead and replace the caliper over the rotor and then fine-tune that adjustment. The next step is to remount the caliper onto the frame. So we're going to follow the cable routing, make sure that's in place. Go ahead and drop the caliper over the rotor, and then we're going to line the caliper mount bolts up with the adapter and then slowly start driving our bolts into place, not tightening them all the way just yet. So now we've got the caliper down on the adapters. It's not fully tight yet, so now we can go ahead and make the final adjustments to make sure that the caliper is in the correct place for proper braking. So it's best to stand behind the bike, or if you're doing the front brake, to stand kind of in front and looking down. And what we want to do is line up our inner pad. On a mechanical disc brake, we're going to start with the inner pad. If you have a hydraulic disc brake, you're going to line this up right in between the pads, straight in the middle. So for step 1, we get our caliper kind of into alignment, hold it with our hands, and just get it a little bit snug, just so the caliper stays in place and doesn't move around side to side. Okay, so we've got it snugged up a bit. I look back again. Looks like it's pretty close. We're going to rotate the wheel. We hear just a little bit of rubbing. So what I'm going to do is loosen up just the back part, just a quarter turn. I'm going to move it over till I can see some daylight between the pad and the rotor and clamp it back down. Give it another test. Sounds great. Now we can go ahead and do our inner pad adjustment and get the inner pad to the right spot. So using your 5mm Allen wrench, we're going to come over and back through the spokes all the way through to that pad adjustment. Looking straight down the back of the bike, we're going to turn that pad adjustment screw until we get that pad into the desired position. One thing you can do is go all the way in until the pad touches the rotor, and then come back 2 or 3 clicks until you get enough clearance so that the wheel can roll straight through nice and easy. We'll go ahead and test the braking power by squeezing the lever. So now that we've got our inner pad adjusted, everything looks good, we can reattach our cable and go ahead and test it with our lever and see how we're doing. So last step for the mechanical disc brake, make sure that the housing and cable are lined up. Come right through the arm, get the cable lined up in the clamp. This is a groove kind of in the back. Once we know our cable's in good spot, go ahead and tighten it up. Like everything else on our QuietKat bike, tight enough so it doesn't pull the cable through, but not so tight that we break things. Once that's attached, we go ahead to our lever and test and see how our brake performance feels. So we go back up to the lever, give it a test. It looks like our lever's going straight to the grip, so we need to add more tension along the way. So we're going to go back and continue fine-tuning until we get the tension just right. So we've gone back and forth a couple times and made our fine-tune adjustments, and now We have great braking performance. Our lever is hitting the hot spot about halfway. Everything feels great. If you need more info on how to fine-tune the adjustment of your mechanical brakes, check out our video on adjusting your mechanical disc brakes.